The study session for the Aurora City Council for Monday, March 10th, 2025 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Councilmember Bergen.
Here.
Councilmember Coombs.
Present.
Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Hancock. Here. Councilmember Drinsky. Here. Councilmember Cassaw. Here. Councilmember Lawson. Here. Councilmember Medina. Here. Councilmember Murillo. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Sundberg.
Councilmember Gardner is at the National League of Cities meeting today. They will not be here. There is no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward, item number 2A through 2I? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward, item number 2A through 2I. Items and policy committees, item number 3A, Integrated Water Master Plan 2.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Good to see you. It's been a little bit. Sarah Young, Assistant General Manager.
Is your microphone on?
The person. Oh, thank you. All right. Better?
Yes.
All right. So Sarah Young, Assistant General Manager, Aurora Water. So what we have for you is a resolution to adopt the Integrated Water Master Plan 2. We thought that it was important to bring this forward because it includes a number of levels of service that are integral in us making decisions about our systems and our capital improvement program. I have with me today James D. Herrera. He's our Planning Services Manager. He led the last version of the Integrated Water Master Plan. He's going to be giving us a high-level overview of the master plan, and then I'll circle back around with some more specifics about levels of service.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here this evening. As mentioned, my name is James D. Herrera, Planning Services Manager for Aurora Water. The main item.
Speak up. I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. The main item that I wanted to present to y'all tonight is provide some background information on what is an integrated water master plan. The key word there being integrated. So what that means is we take a holistic view of everything on the water side of our utility simultaneously. So that includes looking at our water resources. So you can think of water rights in our reservoirs, and also look at source supplies. So the large diameter pipelines to bring that water from the sources into the city. From there, once it's in the city, we then need to treat it. So the master plan also evaluates our treatment facilities, all the specialized processes to get it from raw water to drinking water standards. Once it's treated, then it needs to get out to all of you and the rest of our customers. So that happens through our transmission and distribution, or T&D system. So we take a holistic view of all of these to develop a 20-year prioritized capital improvement plan. But what is important, or what we need to do early on in order to achieve that goal, is to identify level of service goals. And new to this IWMP2, this Integrated Water Master Plan 2, is the concept of target level of service goals and minimum level of service goals. So our target level of service goal identifies our desired state, where we want to be. And our minimum, it provides us some flexibility to adapt to resource constraints, but still meet an acceptable level of service. So using that as kind of our baseline, we then do an evaluation of all the individual disciplines, considering constraints and their interconnectedness with the other disciplines, and produce the capital improvement plan. We look at what are the deficiencies that exist within the city or within the system, and what are the improvements needed to meet or improve those deficiencies. And that develops the project list. We prioritize it, and then that is the main key deliverable out of an integrated master plan, is a prioritized 20-year CIP. One last thing that I wanted to highlight is, even though that planning period is that 20-year, we do look out past that. We make sure that those projects, that money, those investments we're planning in that 20-year horizon are informed by a longer-term look out towards build-out. So making sure we're making a smart investment of today's monies to set us up for success past that 20-year time frame. So with that, I did want to hand it back over to Sarah to highlight a couple key components contained within the resolution tonight.
Thank you, James. So you'll see in your packet there are, 8 tables of levels of service. We're happy to talk about any of the specifics, but I wanted to just walk through a couple of them to give you a general sense of what is in those level of service goals. A lot of them are around water quality. They inform our treatment processes. Some of them are federally regulated, some of them are not. Total dissolved solids is one of the examples that has a suggested number. That impacts our taste, odor, and kind of aesthetic quality of water, so that is a goal that we have in place to inform our treatment plant processes. Another important one in there is emergency reserve. The emergency reserve is basically the amount of water if there's a major critical outage in our system. So like, for example, the Otero system, which brings 50% of our water supply over from the Colorado and Arkansas basins. If there were an outage there, that's an amount of water that allows us to keep meeting our demands while that outage is occurring. That is a substantial point for justifying our Wild Horse Reservoir project as an example for these levels of service. Watering restriction frequency and durations are included in there. And then system-wide water pressures is another example. So as an example, the water pressure at any individual property or company, we establish minimum and maximum pressures. That informs sizes of pipes, sizes of tanks, how the pressure zones are set up. So it gives you a little bit of a sense of how those levels of service inform sizing and designing our infrastructure. So the hope was for this resolution to adopt the Integrated Water Master Plan, including those levels of service. It's important to note, though, that it's not committing to everything that's in the capital plan. All of those things would still go through the regular budgeting process, but that was the hope behind the resolution.
Questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem Sundberg.
This is not a monetary question, but you talked about water pressure. I heard about California, that they're firefighting. They experienced low pressure in hydrants. Was that because a number of them were being used, or just they had a water pressure problem in general? Do you know anything about that? And how would we stand in something like that?
So the way that we develop water pressures in our system, we do analyze what are called fire flow requirements. So that fire flow requirement is based on a certain amount of water depending on what the fire is. So it's very standard to have a specific flow rate for residential properties or for commercial buildings, as an example, where you would need more water in that case. So you run basically the model to kind of demonstrate different fires across the system. However, what is not industry practice and would be kind of an interest, would be interesting to look at what the system would look like. Those are typically for smaller fires in kind of a very localized area. That's how we design the size of the system. If you can imagine, if you have a lot of neighborhoods that's happening at the same time, we don't necessarily size the infrastructure for that type of fire, because then it would become likely cost prohibitive to have infrastructure big enough to handle that in the ground with the number of hydrants and the sizes of the pipes in that specific area, if that makes sense.
Councilmember Bergen.
To piggyback off that question from Mayor Pro Tem Sundberg, because I had this question, and I think Councilmember Hancock also did after the fires in California, in terms of whether we could sustain being able to provide water supply to all the areas. But can you talk about the new areas that are being constructed and not being fully looped in the system, and how that might cause a problem? So we should be considering that system being fully looped before we look at new annexations or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So one of our requirements and the criteria is for a system to be looped for that reason. There are a couple of unique situations where that is not the case. One example is Port Colorado, as an example, but it's a large diameter pipeline that goes out that direction. As you can imagine, having a requirement to loop that system, considering how far away from the city it is, it does put a development like that in a unique situation that way.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to moving 3A forward? Seeing none, then 3A will move forward. Thank you very much. Great job, staff. Thank you. 3B, 2025 Employee Policy Book, updates and revisions.
All right. Good afternoon, Council. Ryan Lance, Human Resources Director, and I'm bringing to you a kind of notification of some employee policy book changes that we're doing and some revisions. I will spend a few minutes just high level going overview of those key changes. Just as a reminder, City Code does have require us to go to City Council for any type of changes with the ability to kind of call for discussion. All of these revisions are in alignment with state, federal regulations, but we're really just trying to focus some clarity on some recent changes we're making with our paid time off program, leave of absences, and then in the packet, you'll find the summary of all the changes. So if you want a little bit more details, a copy of the employee policy book that is with the proposed changes, and then this presentation is going to be included as well. I won't go over too much detail about the intent and purpose of an employee policy book. It is fundamental for all organizations to have those. In terms of the actual intent of it is, I'll focus on the next slide a little bit more on our paid time off program. That was something that I know the Management and Finance Policy Committee thought it would be good to kind of do a quick overview of that. All the other adjustments are just really minor adjustments. We did a major change effective January 1st of 2024. We really overhauled the whole employee policy book. So now we're just kind of tweaking and doing some clarifications from that revamp. And of course, we're making sure we're doing all legislative updates within the policy. Our typical process does include a review. We get all the stakeholders involved, from executive management to working with the appointees, department heads. Payroll has a pivotal role within the employee policy book. We work closely with legal. We have notified the unions, and then we did take it to Management and Finance Policy Committee, and then here we are today. You'll see the summary of changes. I listed out all the policies that are being tweaked or adjusted. Like I said, we do have a summary of that in the backup, so you can take a look at that. I'm also happy to answer any particular questions you have on any one of these items, but I do have highlighted here the paid time off program. So I'll spend just a few minutes giving you a quick overview of what the city is doing with a conversion to a new paid time off program. I'll probably start off with the why. Why are we changing it? The main reason is we feel like we need to modernize the city's paid time off program. We think ours is a little bit outdated. We currently have 3 banks. We have a vacation bank, which we call annual. We have a sick leave bank, and we have a personal leave bank. And the trend over the past decade has been organizations really moving away from that sick leave bank. One of the reasons why we're moving away from it is we are looking at how do we integrate all of our other leave programs. So over the last 5 or 6 years, we've done some benefit enhancements to take care of employees. We've introduced a short-term disability program, long-term disability program. We have a fantastic addiction rehabilitation program, a mental health resource program, and then, of course, we have our bereavement leave, emergency leave. So with all these new programs, it really made that sick leave bank kind of antiquated. We didn't need that anymore. There wasn't a need for these large sick leave balances anymore. So we were really trying to solve that problem of how do we deal with these increasingly large sick leave balances. Also, flexibility and simplicity for employees. Moving over to this new program, employees will have the ability to not be as restricted with what they do with their paid time off balances. And then we do think this will be better for employees' well-being and engagement within the city. So what does the program look like? We went from 3 banks, like I said, the annual, sick, and personal leave, to 2 banks. We're really replacing the annual leave with the general leave bank, and then we're keeping the personal leave bank. The key thing is we are eliminating the sick leave bank. So the general leave is meant for approved time off. It's an accrual based. It carries over year to year. There are maximum balances that employees can have with that. But there is a monetary value to that. So upon separation, employees do own that. So we're following state law and our policies in terms of honoring that accrued earned leave. The second one is that personal leave. That is a use it or lose it by the end of the year. It does not carry over year to year, and there's no payout for the annual leave. So what we're essentially doing is by removing the sick leave, we're shifting a portion of that sick leave that we're removing to increase the general leave and increase the personal leave, which is a use it or lose it bank. But overall, it is a loss of time for employees. So by removing that sick leave, even though we're shifting some of it to these other banks, it is going to be an overall decrease for employees in terms of their paid time off. And then I thought it would be worth mentioning the impact and the response from employees. So how does it impact employees? As you can imagine, this could be a hard change for employees. Anytime you change their leave and you reduce some of their leave, it can be very tough. The initial communication, as you can imagine, we did get some concerned employees. But through multiple meetings, a lot of communication, we really focus on explaining that we're not really removing the chairs from the deck, but we're shifting the chairs on the deck. We went from having, we introduced short-term disability, long-term disability. So because we're introducing those, we now need to really make an adjustment to our paid time off program. Early meetings, employees had some concern, very loud, vocal minority. But with our recent meetings that we've had, we haven't had a lot of negative feedback. In fact, we're having a lot of positive feedback from employees now that they understand the program a lot better. One measurement we've had is when we do new hire orientation and we explain these programs, we get a lot of positive feedback from employees. So new employees are really seeing our program still being very good for employees. We did conduct over 15 all-employee presentations, forums, and sessions, so a lot of feedback, education. And then we have done over 10 department and division-specific presentations. And then finally, our next steps. This is effective with the March 22nd effective date. We'll continue to support employees through this whole process. And then the key thing is as this is a new program, a shift, we're going to report data analysis. We're really going to see and monitor this. And as necessary over the course of the year, couple years, we'll make any type of tweaks or adjustments along the way. So with that, just wanted to kind of open up to see if you guys had any questions, either about the PTO program or any specifics about the revisions to the employee policy.
Questions or discussion? Councilmember Berg.
I just have one. With the use it or lose it, do you anticipate December, like a whole bunch of people taking leave and we don't have any employees working?
The way we designed the program is we think that's going to be the first thing that's used. And we also know from current utilization of their personal leave, employees, their first time off, they use the personal leave.
Typically, your
won't see a
personal leave is
buildup
gone
on
by July.
Well,
Yeah.
where does that annual, does it start, does that year start when they start, or is it on an annual year base? Or is that
Calendar
on
year.
like calendar year?
Calendar year.
It's on a calendar, wow. Okay. Could be
The personal leave is.
Ouch. Okay, yeah, Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Sullivan.
To reward, like the Cal Ripkins of the.
Yeah, so actually, that's one of the things that the PTO program includes is, no, and we actually, and that's one of the complaints we heard about sick leave was that folks never used their sick leave, and we kind of got that. And so, if you're here 5 years and then you separate, we do buy out sick leave at 2-to-1. So you have to sell 2 hours to get 1 hour, and then the number that you can sell back is capped. So that's one of the complaints we heard about from employees. It was like, well, I was never sick. I never did this. And so with the PTO, we're going to where, as Ryan said, when you leave, it's sold out at 1-to-1. And then each year we do allow for an annual sell back, to where if you've not used your leave that year, you can sell back, depending on how long you've been here, you can sell back a portion of that to exactly that. And again, that's going back to what Ryan said. What we talked about was that's their time, right? Like that's part of that there. We want to put a monetary value on that. So if employees want to take the time off, take the time off. You've earned it. If employees want to sell it back because that's more valuable to them, sell it back. They can do that. Cool. And that's why we also wanted that balance of personal, use or lose, and the PTO, because we've heard, I see some looks here, well, we don't want it so unbalanced that employees don't call in sick. Well, you've got those personal days that are use or lose, right? And so we're trying to hit that balance right.
Yeah, on the other hand, you don't want to make it too European like they do in France, where there's very little productivity.
I just awful those people. Okay. Might have an HR complaint here. Further discussion, further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
5C, February, 3C, I'm sorry. Federal, State, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee report. And Liz Rogers is not here.
She's dedicated, so I will be presenting today on behalf of.
She's babysitting Councilmember Gardner at NLC, so yes.
There's only one person doing that? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll be presenting on behalf of Liz today. In your backup, you have all of the information on the bills that we have taken at the Advisory Committee from February 21st and also March 7th. I'm going to go ahead and start with the federal, and then if there's any questions, I'll try to navigate those questions. I do have a real tracker for the state, so I can probably give up-to-date updates on some hearing dates if you want to hear about that. So on February 21st and March 7th, the Advisory Committee took a support position on the following: Directing Resources for Officers Navigating Emergency Drone Act of 2025, H.R. 1058, S. 347 Brownfields Reauthorization Act of 2025, H.R. 308 Low Income Housing for Defense Communities Act. So you have information in the back. Is there any questions on those that maybe I could address? And does the not the committee, does the council support these positions of support?
Questions of the chair of the Advisory Committee? Seeing none, is there any objection to supporting that which has come from the committee, those the legislative actions?
Okay. So I will move on to state, Mayor. So the Advisory Committee for the state positions, we took these positions on February 21st, and we also took them on March 7th. In your backup, you see the positions that we actually took, where I'm going to start with support. HB 25-1171, possession of a weapon by previous offender crimes. HB 25-1272, construction defects in middle market housing. HB 25-1195, first responder voter registration confidentiality. So before I move forward, is there any questions on those bills for support? Yes, Councilmember Coombs.
So I just have a question on 1272. I noted that there's in section 3, the rebuttable presumption of no defect if a local government issues a certificate of occupancy. And so my concern is that going to impose any additional burden on the city that we, and this is a little bit to Pete, but also to you if you have the answer, if we're saying there's no defect as long as we issue a CO, does our CO process need to be more robust in that instance? And then is there any kind of liability that attends to that?
I will let Pete, do you have a?
Yeah, so
Because-
generally a rebuttable presumption is it's true, but the plaintiff could establish evidence to rebut the presumption. So it really doesn't put anything on the city. It just allows a plaintiff to say, because what the other option would be if it says, hey, if a city issues a CO, the city is saying there's no defect. That's not what they're saying. They're saying it's assumed that there's no defect, but it can be overcome by the plaintiff. So really the city is, there could be, I don't know if I'm just talking out loud here about how this would play out in court, but there would probably be some representative from the city explaining how our process would be to establish a CO, and then Jason would have more on that. Yeah.
So typically when we're reviewing this, and we get questions sometimes, I think you all have seen this from homeowners sometimes when they have a problem with a home builder. Typically what we always make sure we're very clear on when we are doing our inspections, we are essentially certifying that the project was built to International Building Code. We do not certify the quality of construction, which is often what this is coming down to, is that, yeah, you built it to code, but somehow the quality of construction wasn't there. So I think this rebuttable proof would, I think, be or rebuttable presumption would be, I think, consistent with how we've talked about in the past, again, that we're certifying things are built to code, but we're not signing off on the quality of the construction.
Mayor. So I guess my question is like the nature and intent of defects law is about the quality, not about just whether or not it was built to code. So I guess I have a question of relevance then, if it doesn't matter really it doesn't change what we do. And then my other question is around like at least the appearance that there's some burden shifting happening here, right? That they're saying, well, as long as the city puts out the CO, then we assume there's no defect, and the city has governmental immunity. So there's a burden shifting that then could result in basically relying on the city's governmental immunity to get away with what end up being defects. Because there's still a presumption, even though it's rebuttable. So that's just a concern that I have about having that provision. And I also think, again, it puts it off onto us as a local government when this is a state law, which is an issue that we've discussed at length.
Further discussion?
Okay, is there, so, Councilmember Bergeron?
I don't know if you mentioned it, but did this one go away, hang on, I'm looking at here, the juvenile detention bed, that's still happening?
No, that will be heard on March 18th
Okay.
for the hearing.
And then the other one I wanted to ask about was, I'm like looking on here. Is there one on the Labor Peace Act?
I can look on my log. if
There is
you-
one, but I don't think we took a position.
I don't think we
It's
took a
not-
position on that.
Why, do you know why we didn't take a position?
I don't think it's been raised yet.
I don't think it's been,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're only
Okay.
kind of doing them. yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So if there's any questions, I do also want to mention too, that there are two other construction defects bills, HB 1261, and that's with Representative Bacon. So that's the consumer construction defect, and there's also another one, reducing the cost of housing, and that's with Senator Lundgren. So there's all different types of things that go within each of those. So there are there are three actual construction defect bills. Yes,
And are we taking a position on those others? I don't think I see them on our list of positions.
no, we
Okay.
just took the one on HB 25-1272 because that aligns with our priorities. The other ones, we felt that did not. But those are two extra construction defect bills. Just to kind of give you just an analysis, HB 1261, this bill strengthens the protections of homeowners and consumers in construction defect cases requiring full disclosure or project documents from builders. So this is mainly from the trial lawyers, I think this one is. And then, I'm not reading the whole synopsis, I'm just kind of giving you an idea. The other one is reducing the cost of housing. It says current law restricts construction defect negligent claims unless they result in damage or loss of real or property. So they have different sections that are being modified in this particular one. So those are the three that are right there in the legislature right now being considered.
I think the
Thank
central
you
issue
for
and the one
additional
that we're
information.
supporting is the right to repair
Right.
within there.
Okay, Mayor, can I go ahead and
Please.
continue? I do have a couple others. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off
No,
track. So we're monitoring HB 25-1053, landowner immunity for emergency access to property. So as you can see in your backup, if you read that, we did take a monitoring position on that because none of our amendments got considered. So our next one will be HB 25-1243, peace officer questions during a traffic stop. We took a position of amend on this on 3/7/25. Originally, we had opposed this bill, but we're trying to see if we can work with Rep. Lindsay and some of the other, to see if they can maybe take some of our amendments. So right now, we're going to take an amend position. If they're not, which they're really kind of considering, which I think is good, they're going to kind of look and see. So we'll get more details from Liz on that. But if they don't, then we'll go back to a opposed position. That'll be brought back to the Pfizer committee. And then our last bill is HB 25-1273, residential building stair modernization. We are opposing that. That was being brought back from last year. So we're opposing that bill. If there's any questions for me, I'll be able to address those. Otherwise, does everyone approve these?
Questions for the Pfizer chair?
Yes.
Councilmember Cruz.
I would just recommend to monitor on 1272, I'm just concerned, or maybe amend regarding that local government presumption. That would be my preferred approach there, just because, again, I'm concerned about the impacts on local governments, including ourselves.
Well, I'm going to, we can, I guess, Mayor, you can ask if the council wants to do that. I'm going to stay with the regular position. Our initial position of support. So.
Councilmember Coombs, can you please restate?
So I would recommend an amend position to remove the local government presumption, or the presumption of no defect when a local government issues a certificate of occupancy.
I would oppose. Is there further discussion on the Coombs? I guess we're not formally taking motions, but proposal? Seeing none, is there opposition to the Coombs proposal?
Mayor, I oppose.
Okay, very well. A majority have risen in opposition. Is there further comments or questions? Seeing none, is there objection to moving,
We're not really moving, we're just supporting these positions. here.
supporting the Pfizer positions of the Pfizer committee? Seeing none, then that's the direction.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Great job, thank you. Seeing no further business before
Oh, there's nothing, there's nothing.
the Aurora City Council study
There's no-
session, meeting is adjourned at 6 o'clock. I would hope that the members could be on the floor at 6 o'clock for public invited to be heard.